It is 28 degrees centigrade here in Abuja. Yeah, bright and sunny morning, and lots of already activity going on as people try to get themselves up and running as they get to work. Different construction going on in different parts of the country, so different areas experiencing all kinds of traffic, but all the same, this is my Maitama area here in Abuja. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And a very wonderful morning to all of you out there. The beautiful skyline of Abuja right there on your screens. I'm Kayla Megwa. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. And yes, of course, a lot of hold-ups all over town. But there was some respite in the nation's capital yesterday. Some rain yesterday. And of course, we saw the weather really calm down. It was a really refreshing to see all of that. It was really nice. But of course, as usual, we expect that today is going to get hotter. However, the beautiful skyline of Abuja right there on your screens, Maitama Junction right there, one of the loveliest parts of the nation's capital, getting cleaner and cleaner, by the way.
Yeah, so I mean, you drive around the city, you see sometimes people just throwing things through their windows, and you think, oh gosh, these people just do that. But anyways, I mean, it's something that, you know, people need to try and get used to, so that, hey, don't be caught on the wrong side of the law, really, if you have to do it.
Crazy to think about.
Don't do that.
When you see something so neat, how do you deface something so nice? I don't understand it.
It's I think who knows, maybe as time goes on, we just hope that all of that enforcement, yeah, I mean, these days you have to enforce almost everything in the city.
We need a lot to get you to be tidy.
Yeah, so we'll see how all of that eventually plays out. But I know when we go through the dailies, I mean, yesterday, several narratives out there, but I think some of the key thing here today will be about policing. It's big all over the place when you turn back and forth. So we'll also go into that argument, but equally important was the meeting that the president, alongside other African presidents, also held about counterterrorism. So where are we on all of that? It's part of the conversation we'll also have here. But I know that doesn't mean that we're relegating the issues of the economy to the background, because, I mean, without security, how can investors? They'll always impact on the economy. So let's just go ahead and take you right through some of the dailies this morning. Let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies this Tuesday morning, and we'll start with New Telegraph. The lead story, Insecurity, is the theme. IGP kicks against state police, wants NSCDC, FRSC merged under NPF. That's the Nigeria Police Force. So that is the big lead here. But beneath that lead story, UTME, YFG may peg varsity others entry age at 18 years by minister. So that gets your interest, then go ahead and have a look at it. Leadership toes the same line. State policing, IGP CSOs object as Tinubu, Jonathan, Abdulsalami give nod. Look at the riders, some of the riders for this particular story. We're ready to decentralize force presidency. IGP kicks, wants NSCDC, FRSC merged as police departments. Nigeria can't have internal security without state police. Jonathan, Abdulsalami. So that is a thing here now. But look at blueprints, also on the same subject matter. Many of them will today, I reckon. Nigeria not yet ripe for state police, IGP declares. Okay. Daily Times, the same path. Nigeria not ripe for state police, IGP insists. Well, several writers now, I think. Okay, well, we'll come to that. Nigerian News Direct, also on the same theme, state police, Nigeria immature for implementation, will be abused by governors, ascribed to IGP. Seems to be hugging the headlines. This Nigeria, similar narrative, Nigeria not ripe for state police, IGP Egbetokun shoots down clamor. And then in the meantime, you see ex-President Jonathan, let's stop the debate. It's long overdue. will consider implications from multiple perspectives, says Tinubu. So that one you see right there. Vanguard, the same line, IGP kicks as ex-president, others back state police. Daily Independent, IGP Agbetokun disagrees with Tinubu governors on state police. The writers here list several reasons why. Daily Trust, the same thing. IGP kicks as Jonathan, others canvass state police. But then you see beneath this Daily Trust story, terrorism, renew social contract with citizens. UN tells Nigeria, others. Tinubu blames ransom, illegal mining. So, the question then is, what are they going to do about that? Or what are they doing about it? But differently. So, The Guardian told a different path entirely. Recapitalization. Insurers, banks compete for scarce funds under new NICOM. Yeah, but they also do focus on that IGP story. It's beneath that lead story here. Government considers 18 as minimum wage. Well, they also consider that IGP story, but equally important is this one. The government considers 18 as minimum age for admission seekers. That might interest you. So that is just some of the dailies here today. Okay, so almost all of them, bar one, not none. The Guardian. So they focus, insurance banks compete for scarce funds. So yes, we'll look at the issue of this state policing, which is not the first, not the last time that this will be. Everybody will have their take, expectedly, but some of the issues that are equally worthy of note, particularly on the front page of The Guardian, several others are, look at this, it hits home. Cooking gas price spikes further as Nigerians struggle with food inflation. Now, it's almost like as though several people haven't been battered by this inflationary trend, appear to have just thrown up their hands in the air, just wondering who can save us from the vagaries of the economy, they wonder. Because this, we understand, is risen by 7.1%. So if you went to the markets yesterday to pick it up, and then you go again today, clearly you know that it will not be the same that you're going to get to. So
I'm actually now thinking about how much damage my gas is going to cost. And is it due? Actually, they're worried about it.
So,
and I'm sure a lot of the women out there who cook regularly are thinking about that. Wait, 7.1%.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
I think we got it about 12 or 14,000 recently.
Okay, so there you go. So but it may be slightly different in some other areas, but now
it was high at the time. We don't want it higher.
14? Okay.
It was high at the time.
So now this is the challenge we've got here, and there are several questions about gas. And you know what they tell us behind the scenes, several of these the experts concerning this is that what we even get for the most part is associated gas. That means it's not that they're specifically the way they drill for oil, they're not going specifically for gas. So it's what you stumble across while they're going about their usual drilling and things like that. So you just make use of that. But we do have huge deposit of gas in the country. So where are the investments in that sector? If it's going to be the next big thing, why do we still have to bother about it? Well, I know it's the same thing that we'll have with petrol. We keep asking ourselves, we're a producer of this product. So what is in it for us really? Because why can't we have a system in place to ensure that if it's a natural resource, why do we have to almost like it's easier for camel to go through the eye of a needle than for us to get this product? And so huge questions about our management of some of these natural resources that we've been endowed with in this country. So I mean, I like to focus on the country. Let me not even go beyond to Africa and things like that. So who knows? And if this has happened again, this gas as a result of also struggling with food inflation, you know that as time goes on, we may have that again.
I'm going to have to look for alternatives to gas. I'm still worried about this.
What can the alternatives be?
Sawdust. You remember back then during the Abuja time?
How did they get the sawdust?
we had to do outside
tree felling?
I don't know.
So it's, ordinarily, these are times where, that's why society, different things have got to work. If you had the Ivory Tower, they were doing lots of research.
Oh, yes.
And they were funded properly.
Oh, yes.
You'd have somebody come up with some eureka idea, fantastic scenario wearing, but I know.
This monopoly wouldn't exist to push it down.
So it's the story of our lives.
It's the story of our lives in this country, and it's very disappointing. I think what stands out for me this morning in the papers is from the Leadership newspaper. And this one is going to affect us in the FCT as well. More on page 7 from the Leadership newspaper. The federal government is ordering the sale of discos managed by banks and AMCON within the next 3 months. Guess where AEDC is managed from? It's actually right there. The Abuja Electricity Distribution Company is currently under the management of the United Bank of Africa. Fidelity Bank and Afro-Exim Bank had in 2022 taken over the management of Benin Electricity Distribution Company, and Kaduna's own and Ibadan is under AMCON management.
It's a story worthy of at least a lot more reading, probably too between the lines, I might add. But I don't know, I mean, almost at the risk or point of saying, whatever government has to do to make sure you switch on and then power supply is steady.
I mean, you're absolutely correct. I don't think many people are very miffed about the high cost of electricity, but I think the honest truth is if it's available, people will pay. If I'm not having electricity, let it be because I couldn't afford to pay for it, as opposed to having to pay for something that I do not have, But more on that from page 7 of Leadership newspaper. But like you mentioned earlier, everyone is talking about that event that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
The IGP versus everybody else, including you who are watching right now. So we'll be talking more about it shortly.
It's almost as if everybody's going for his jugular.
I don't think he's scared. He was very brave when he said it.
So 100. So wait a minute. Why is IGP against state police? They wonder. It's curious.
Well, he gave reasons,
but they wonder. They thought
corruption.
Okay.
Being used for nefarious activities. And these are germane concerns.
So, does it then mean that the current policing structure as it exists now, if you search none of these things, they can't be found guilty of any one of this list, this long list on the IG's list?
It was very telling hearing him say that yesterday, and it really caught. I remember I was doing something else, and the TV was on behind me. And the moment he said it, I literally stopped what I had to do, and I started looking. I was like, okay, it's not him. Someone is representing him. But the person was saying his words. That Mr. Ben, who was there, was reading out what the IGP said. And, we stay having a conversation in the office, and I was like, look, if the IG feels this way about it, are we going to make any headway in this regard?
Well, it's time for conversation about this matter. And the beauty about this in a democracy is that ideas have got to contend. And then the superior ones should have the day. So, bring it on. That's what we think here. So don't forget, you can also send us your thoughts ahead of time, because that is what we're going to talk about when we return in just a moment. So go on, get your keypads, whatever it is. We'd love to hear from you. We will be right back in a moment. Stay on with us.
Cube is available in beef, chicken, jollof, and shrimp flavors at attractive prices of 100, 200, 500 Naira, along with Saver and Super Saver packs.
Terra Cube, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
Glovo, you order anything you want, and when you receive it, you celebrate with your whole body. Because when that tasty grilled chicken is here, the weekend starts. The ingredients for your favorite recipe just in time. And when the cake arrives, the party is on. Because receiving anything on Glovo deserves a dance. Download the app, order anything you want, and track it minute by minute until it arrives. Glovo, order anything, we deliver in minutes.
Senior executives face local macroeconomic turbulence and global geopolitical upheavals. Don't worry, Texam UK got your back. A transformative journey with Texam Strategies for Sustainable Organizational Success Program, April 24 to 25, 2024, in Lagos will position you and your organization for these challenges. Our interactive sessions, games, assessments, and peer-to-peer learning are unique with a great faculty led by John Peters, former chair, Association of MBAs and ex-prisoner of war, delivering actionable insights for you to navigate uncertainties and thrive. Pay 3,155,215 Naira by March 15th for your spot and enrich your leadership skills in resilience, innovation, and sustainable growth. Apply now via +44 7425 883 791 or exec@texam.co.uk. It's a strategic opportunity to win. Texam, insights that inspire, actions that change the world.
Cube is available in beef, chicken, jollof, and shrimp flavors at attractive prices of 100, 200, 500 Naira, along with Saver and Super Saver packs.
TerraCube, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
With Glovo, you order anything you want, and when you receive it, you celebrate with your whole body. Because when that tasty grilled chicken is here, the weekend starts. The ingredients for your favorite recipe just in time. And when the cake arrives, the party is on. Because receiving anything on Glovo deserves a dance. Download the app, order anything you want, and track it minute by minute until it arrives. Glovo, order anything, we deliver in minutes.
Approach to tackling insecurity.
Former Head of State General Abdulsalami Abubakar, former President Goodluck Jonathan, federal lawmakers, security agencies, members of the diplomatic corps, traditional and religious leaders attend a one-day policy dialogue on state policing system. The event, which is organized by the House of Representatives and the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, comes as the National Assembly prepares for another round of constitution amendment.
There are lots of people who are very, very anxious that the police be reformed, that the police be given more powers, be given more responsibility. Perhaps that the way to go might actually be to decentralize the police in a way that ensures that the decentralization of the police safeguards it from abuse.
The prospect of a state-level policy architecture, which is at the heart of this dialogue, is paramount, given the imperatives of addressing the scourge of crime, insurgency, and various forms of violence that are impacting on Nigeria's development trajectory, thereby presenting a threat to the well-being and safety of all citizens.
In the previous assembly, the state police bill was rejected by federal lawmakers who feared that state governors may abuse the system. It appears the federal legislature is shifting grounds, just as former heads of states throw their weight behind the creation of state police to address the security concerns across the country.
As we explore the models of state policing that have been successful in other nations, we must be judicious in adopting these frameworks to fit our unique Nigerian situation.
We are not going to debate, and we should not waste our time debating whether we should have state police or not. Listening to the speaker, he gave the history. Even in this country, we operated it before. Why is that the military scrapped it? Because of the abuse. And that is the area we should concentrate on.
As much as we are talking of establishing state police, we should also look into the role vis-a-vis of our royal fathers.
The current police leadership and its parent ministry, however, appear not to be in accord on the matter of state police.
I will emphasize that state police can enhance local responsiveness, improve crime prevention, and strengthen security at the grassroots level. I will recommend an institutional and legal framework that delineates the roles, responsibilities, and jurisdiction of state police forces within the broader national security architecture.
It is the submission of the leadership of the Nigerian police force that Nigeria is yet to mature and ready for the establishment of state-controlled police. This is due to the underlying reasons. One, there is no adequate resources in place for police infrastructure. Again, there are potential for abuse of power by state political leadership.
For President Bola Tinubu, who is represented by his vice, deliberations on state police must be thorough to produce workable resolutions.
The President deserves commendation for his openness and proactive stance towards the idea of reforming and decentralizing the police force. The concept of state policing is not merely a policy proposal, but a potential milestone in the evolution of our law enforcement framework.
In the last administration, 25 states delayed consideration of the constitutional amendment bills sent by the National Assembly because the National Assembly did not include the establishment of state police. Also, immediate past President Muhammadu Buhari openly rejected the idea of a state policing system. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Okay, let state police to be or not to be, we'll find out from the two gentlemen who are here with us. Honorable Obinna Chidoka is a former member of the 9th Assembly, and sitting beside him is Honorable Philip Agbese, who is a spokesperson of the 10th House of Reps Committee on Constitution Amendment. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Well, Honorable Philip, this is a matter that is going to be part of the amendment of the Constitution, and they have to amend the laws to ensure that this happens. I know that probably might be early days yet, because I don't think the House has taken any position, correct me if I'm wrong, but there'll be several debates on this matter, and I think the House will also welcome that, eventually expansive session on this matter. Perhaps I should ask, so what is the thinking, the approach, maybe for you or the House, if you will, on this matter?
Well, thank you very much, Chamberlain. We have introduced a new culture in the 10th Assembly in terms of engagement with the masses. You recall that on the 13th of June 2023, when His Excellency Dr. Tajuddin Abbas assumed the leadership of the 10th Assembly House of Representatives as the Speaker, he declared that the 10th Assembly is going to be about the masses. It's going to be about the people. It was in that vein that he christened the 10th National Assembly, the 10th House of Representatives, as the People's House. So in line with that
Isn't that how it is by default design? It's the People's House, normally. Did he need to say that for...
Well,
what changes if he says that?
In truth and in spirit, what we have today, just like what we did yesterday, to subject the bill before the House to wider consultation with stakeholders, to engage everybody, to bring in their opinion. And if you saw what happened yesterday, like the Inspector General of Police presentation and the Honorable Minister of Police Affairs presentation, where you see that these are people who are coming from the same executive branch of government, but still do not agree on what state police should be. That is very healthy for our democracy. It is the kind of robust debate that we want, and that is why we call it the People's House. So from top to bottom, we are going to get stakeholders across various sectors of the country to make their input. And that is why Mr. Speaker, in his speech yesterday, said those for state police and those against state police, that we in the parliament do not believe that anybody is wrong. The Inspector General of Police is correct. The Honorable Minister of Police Affairs is correct. And in line with our mantra of the People's House, we are going to subject the debate, with the current realities to wider consultation, get the input of Nigerians, because we have now returned the parliament and the process of lawmaking back to Nigerians. Tell us what you want. We are here to serve you. And in the 10th Assembly, we have said we must do things differently. That is to say that the bills that will be passed by the House will not be the opinion of the 360 members alone, but it's going to have a larger input of the 240 million population of our people. So when we take this, yesterday was just one step. Other steps will follow. And that's exactly what we are doing in the Constitution Amendment Committee. Engage stakeholders as much as possible. Let their input, be the supreme ruling law for us. So if at the end of the day, Nigerians agree after all the consultations that we want state police, the 10th National Assembly will be left with no option but to give to Nigerians what they want. And in the event that they say, we don't want state police, we will give to Nigerians what they want.
Honorable Chiloka, this suggests, some people could interpret this as to, so 9th Assembly wasn't even the People's House. So they're returning it back to the people. So is that why this fell through when it came last time?
No, absolutely not. The National Assembly has always been the People's House. But just so that I said that the Right Honourable Speaker has, in his wisdom, christened it the People's House, which we all believe in, because we represent the people. He's been a member of the National Assembly from 2011, and this time around, he's subjecting all his deliberations more to the wider range of our people. But to answer your question fully, it's still the People's House. We belong to the People's House. We represent the people. 360 of us represent 360 federal constituencies all over Nigeria, and that is what we represent. And coming back to the bill at hand, if I may go in, I want to first of all thank the Right Honourable Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas, for convening what we saw yesterday and for being at the forefront of making sure every Nigerian understands where we are today. And where we are today is a situation where it has become imperative that we have this discussion, looking at how Nigeria has panned out. We are grappling with a lot of insecurity, and it seems that the Nigerian police, as presently constituted, might not be able to sort out the issues we have. And so I also want to thank the Right Honourable Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Okeze. This is the bill that is presently before the House, attempting to amend sections 214 to all the way to 216 and thereabout of the Nigerian Police Establishment Bill 2023. So what are we trying to do here? Sorry, when I say we, National Assembly hasn't left me yet. So the intent is to see to a more effective, efficient, robust policing or police force in Nigeria. So I'm going to come speak to proponent and opponent of this particular bill. And what we have yesterday is a situation where, from the statistics we see, a policeman is supposed to take care of 450 people or persons in Nigeria. At the moment, we have one policeman to almost about 600 persons in the country. And that is not adequate. It's far from being adequate. And many have argued that even the police, I'm sorry to say, might not definitely know the number of policemen we have in Nigeria, because the statistics vary. About maybe 371,000 police force in Nigeria. vis-a-vis about 26.2 million Nigerians, which that number, I think the census should give us the right number that we are in Nigeria. And of course, we've got memory lane on how, if you go back on how the police force has started in Nigeria in the 18th century, of both the Northern Constabulary and the Royal Niger, and then of course the Eastern Niger Constabulary coming together after the amalgamation to, of course, over time, form what we know today as the Nigerian Police Force. And it's become a huge operation with the Nigerian Police Force, having about 17 zones, about 8 administrative organs within the police, and this amount of persons. So if I may go quickly, because of time, to talk about what are the issues that the police force had yesterday, like the honorable member here has said, about the disagreement between the Minister of Police Affairs and the representative of the IGP. What was the IGP's grounds? The IGP's ground is that, number one, that Nigeria is not ripe, we're not ready, due to the enormous structure of the Nigerian police force, having police stations in the 36 states of the Federation, 774 local governments. You have to deal with issues of staffing, recruitment, promotions, arms, ammunitions, all that, which is huge, that maybe the states might not be able to fund. But you see, there is something about this bill that I see that is also very nice. The bill has made it in such a way, and which is what the argument we've had. Yesterday night, I was talking to my brother as well when we were discussing about these issues. He also shares the same views, and many other persons, some honorable members, even the speaker, and of course the deputy speaker, share this view that we can have a federal police and a state police. And then we can monitor it in such a way that the Senate, House of Reps, will monitor what goes on in the federal legislature, the federal police, sorry, and the House of Assembly monitors what goes on with the commissioner. So any state that can come up with state police should, of course, imbibe or take it, as we have put in the bill, and run with the state police in terms of having a police commissioner in charge, non-interference by the state governors, because Solomon Arase, the former IGP of police, said one thing yesterday, that the governors are like emperors, that those are the people you have to fear the most. And in any way, the governors already will always claim that they are not chief security officers. They have what they call security votes. Some of them have almost 10, 12 billion. In fact, most people don't know how much is in that security vote. So why don't you take that money, if it scales through, to fund the police in your state? If you cannot, then rely on the federal government, who can provide the federal police for you, so that you can monitor what goes on in your state, and we can leave these issues over. There have been more than 700 cases of kidnapping, and because in Nigeria we're not very numerical, we're not sure of these cases, over 5 billion paid in ransom. This is the one they've claimed is official. People are being kidnapped every day on a daily basis, and it's even become like a recharge card business. Kidnap you, take 100K, and you move on.
So some of the concerns there, as raised by the IGP, is suggest that's part of what you're addressing.
Yes.
Which is, what do we do with the way the governors may handle it, may abuse it?
Yes.
In fact, abuse of this formation, generally speaking, that's one of the huge concerns.
Yes.
So, because that's why some people thought, no. Because, I mean, the foreign president also said, the most important thing, too, is we should see how do we make sure that governors don't use this for ballot stuffing and winning elections.
Okay, so yesterday you saw a station where President Jonathan spoke about the Nigerian police. In fact, President Jonathan simply said, the matter is closed. We've discussed this matter. What we're waiting for is operations. But he went ahead to say that while you're trying to reorganize the Nigerian police force, you should rejig the INEC. That he has been on so many missions outside Nigeria where you have
the policemen outside
the venue of the elections, and you have an election venue where you have multiplicity of polling units, and you go there, you vote, and you come out. And so the policemen do not go near the election venues. And this is one area to make sure you win. What about the second area that people talk about? The governor having access to the police to intimidate his perceived political enemies.
I mean, I want to be able to get you on that because he is absolutely correct. He alluded to a particular election that he covered in Senegal, and I happened to be there with him. It was interesting to see that the police were nowhere. The police were outside the venue.
Yes.
But another thing to add is that there was no technology in the place. There was no BVAS machine. They didn't have to contend with a lot of the things that we had to contend with, and they also didn't have to contend with the kind of crowds that we have to contend with. Our situation is a little more peculiar.
Yes.
But I wanted to be able to get you on something that you talked about. And it's, it's also ties to the question Chamberlain just asked you. And it has to do with control, monitoring of governors. I've always wanted to be able to get from a lawmaker's perspective. Are there actual laws? I have two. Are there actual laws? Maybe I should ask Mr. Agbase this question. Agbase, are there actual laws that can rein in governors from acting like emperors? Are there checks in our laws so that when a governor, if the state police thing passes, are there ways that, at the federal level or at the National Assembly, you can check his behavior?
Yes. Because of the system of government that we run in the country, from past experience, those who have spoken against the state police on the grounds of governors, misusing or abusing the instrument of state police, quite a number of persons have agreed with them based on the very strong arguments that they have raised. And in making an attempt to answer your question, because I think it is one that the answers are very obvious. Yes, the National Assembly, and the federal government, has a clearly defined structure. And that is why, the issue of decentralizing the police, one of the arguments, in framing the Constitution is the issue of exclusive list and concurrent list. And actually, I'm not, I don't want to preempt, the views of Nigerians, because as much as possible, Mr. Speaker has admonished the committee, to do its best to be impartial and neutral as much as possible, to also equally give Nigerians the confidence that is required to make to amend the Constitution. But in that, let us look at the issue of allocations, to local government. How have the governors managed allocations to local government, which is directly under their purview? Whereas the federal government does not respect the law and does not tamper with resources going to the state. How do the governors behave in that regard? Then yesterday, I argued somewhere too.
Sorry, before that time, I mean, if I could just, another angle from that, from the Kelly's question is, in terms of the laws that are there to make sure governors don't abuse the police force, yes, the IGPRS and several other people may have their opinion, but are we not missing or glossing over inadvertently somehow the fact that there's also actually a school of thought that believes the lawmakers are maybe the problem? Because in the states, how many of those state assemblies actually hold their governors accountable?
Yeah, you see, like in the Night Assembly, the Constitutional Amendment Committee, did quite a lot, and they made a breakthrough when, they were unable to get 24 state houses of assembly. And that's the irony, about the affairs of this country. Because even the issue of state house of assembly autonomy was passed by the national parliament. And when it got to the state parliament, they vehemently rejected the autonomy
so who's
that was supposed to give.
Is it the governors or the state assembly themselves?
So I think what happens, I don't want to be categorical about it because I've never been in the State House of Assembly before, but what we have heard most of the times is that the governors, for fear of impeachment, install their cronies as speakers and have full grip of the State Houses of Assembly. That is one school of thought. But for us in the Constitutional Amendment Committee, what we want to do, the committee headed by Right Honorable Benjamin Okeze-Kalu, is to ensure that in doing things differently, we, in making the new law or in amending the law, we bring in those checks and balances. And that is why if you look into this bill, you see the place of the Federal Police Service Commission and the State Police Service Commission.
So just to answer just so I can get a clear answer from you, the answer is no. Not yet.
No.
That the state is not right for state police?
No.
Or that the government
are there laws that can control a governor or stop a governor from using state police to carry out nefarious activities?
No,
is there any kind of check at the federal level?
No, in the proposed bill, there is a place for the establishment of the Federal Police Service Commission and the State Police Service Commission. And in doing that, it's not far from what we have as the National Judicial Commission, where even though we have judicial officers appointed by governors at the state level, at the state high court, the magistrate, they are controlled, the state customary courts are controlled by the state. But again, you have a national body, the National Judicial Council, which deals with the issue of disciplining erring judges. So if we mirror that, I believe that we will be able to address some of the fears. And like I mentioned earlier, our duty as a parliament is, if at the end of the day we agree that what Nigerians want is state police, as a parliament, that is equal to the task, we will be able to introduce checks and balances. So whichever direction Nigerians decide that the issue of state police should go, we as a parliament have a role, a strong role to play in ensuring that whichever direction we're able to introduce those checks and balances in our laws to ensure that, and again, I've argued that even if we want the current police to work in line with the 10th Assembly's legislative agenda, one point we are very serious about is the issue of oversight. If we oversight the current police as presently constituted properly, like we have commenced, the current police will be able to deliver even far more than what is being expected in the state police structure. Because today, you have police officers who are not properly remunerated.
We'll get to that. I want you to get Honorable Chidoka to actually give me more clarity. Yeah. So I'm hearing futuristic a lot from him. We will incorporate, there are plans to, as is.
As is.
Is there anything that can hold these men from being emperors and using something that is actually important to the Nigerian people? Because when the conversation about state police comes up, people tend to forget that. When the conversation about state police comes up, it's got nothing to do with all of this politics. We're worried about the security situation of the country. And we're the way terrorists, bandits, and all of these people move from one place to the other is through the local systems. And we want to be able to ensure that states are able to hone in on the structures that they have to protect the Nigerian people. Yesterday, we saw 300 warlords in northern Nigeria alone. These are some of the issues. How do warlords exist and operate in a place where there is a state governor, there is state assembly, there's local government? How does that happen? So is there any way that we can control, because this is the major fear, this abuse by the governors. Is there any way to control it right now? Or are we waiting for something to be done?
Okay, so remember that this is a framework. What the National Assembly is trying to do is to tell Nigerians, we have come up with a framework to say, let's decentralize the police. The way it is fully centralized within the federal systems. We can move the police force down to the state and to the local government. And so what we need to do is to bring about a framework that will help that work. The last amendment of the Police Act was in 2020. So if you look at the Police Act, of course, the governors have no place. What I mean by that is specifically because it's a federal police. And of course, it gives you the provisions that deal with how to deal with the police and all that, whether it's maintained or not. And that's why you see the governors keep telling you that as the police force is presently constituted, they have no right over the police commissioner because that right resides with the IGP. And so coming with that, with this framework, is to say, when we create a state police, to assuage your fears about abuses, because what everybody keeps talking about is, let's run away from these governors. These governors are emperors. Let's not go near them. But I say one thing. Let's measure. One, abuses by governors is one. Two, what other indices do you have on the other side of the table? Banditry, kidnapping, theft, criminal activities, 300 warlords, maybe 301, because I say we don't know we don't really count these things. If not talking about the Southeast, the South-South, you saw what happened in that community, Okwama or somewhere, where 17 soldiers were killed. Unprecedented in a country called Nigeria. So when you look at all these issues we have, as against abuse, then you know that this is just one issue. And within the provisions or the proviso of the new framework for creation of the state police, we are going to create, a an enabling environment that will make sure that the governors do not have control over the state commissioner or the state police. And it's going to be there. He mentioned it as well. So that these are some of the things and this is, you test out new amendments, new laws, and see, and the way it goes, we'll keep tightening the nose to make sure that what we want from the governors is, take that your security votes that you spend the way we don't know, put it back into sponsoring the police to assuage the fears of people like the IGP who says we are not ready due to the enormous investment you need to make. So that viable states in Nigeria who can afford it will probably set up their new maybe
so you prefer that one, so that not everybody will go at the same time. If states feel I can afford it, go ahead.
Absolutely.
If you feel you can't, stay away.
Just work with the federal police. You can still stay with the federal police, who will also make sure that they protect you. And even in the state police, even in the police in the states that are very viable, when there are so many other issues coming up and they can't handle it, they can have a recourse back to the federal police and request for more assistance, who will come in and help.
But the challenge is that we're looking at that from that angle alone. Because in practice, if a state says that, boy, this governor has state police and he's using it to, he's winning elections, and me, and then I lose, this will come into play.
No. Say, Chamberlain, when former President Jonathan was making his presentation yesterday, he talked about elections.
Yeah,
and
it's a key concern.
Yeah, it's a key concern. Again, but that, for me, is a wrong mindset. The well-being of our citizens.
Is it not being realistic?
Yeah,
he's being realistic.
No, he was. But again, I don't want the debate around state police, to be limited to the issue of elections alone.
Why?
Because, you see, today, from the proposals that we have received, and that is why we have listened to him yesterday as a parliament, we have listened to some key traditional rulers. The committee will be taking the debate further again. We intend to even engage, stakeholders like Okada riders. What do you think is possible? Because, police has to do with the issue of protection of life and properties and, again, containing crimes. So it goes beyond. Elections are very important, but it is something that is about the totality of our well-being as a people. It is even about the unborn child.
So you should include it. You can't exclude it.
No, we're not excluding it. But I'm saying that it should not be the only reason why we should, decide on the new framework. But like I said earlier, and it remains our stand in the People's House, that we are leaving it to the views, even though as individuals, in some of my colleagues, did not agree with the bill. That was why when it came, of course, we always have the nays for against it. But we have agreed as a parliament with our new doctrine and philosophy that beyond state police, the other issues like electoral reforms that are in the constitutional amendment and everything that people have proposed must be taken to the masses of our country. And it is what they want that will do. Our only duty will be to fine-tune.
On the lighter note,
yes. Our duty
you keep saying
will be
it's the house of the people.
Yes, to fine-tune.
When it came to the debate as to the age qualification for politicians, they didn't take it to the people. No. They decided that, so, well, no. They remember the people.
I want to be able to talk about some of the issues.
But no, very weighty
issues. To be able to talk about some of the issues that the IG had yesterday. One of them, we talked about two of them, which is funding of the police, abuse of power. There's also the fact that the state police would lead to multiple structures in the state. Does this bill address that?
Yes. So, as I've said, of course, the IGP in protecting his, will I call it domain, because one of the IGPs actually joked that he has his own political party, which is the Nigerian Police Force, which does not interfere with with what we do in the democratic setting, because they're supposed to be neutral. Now, if you recall yesterday, what the representative of IGP said, that in their recommendations, that they should subsume the Federal Road Safety Corps, the NCDC,
NSCDC,
and other organs of government into the Nigerian police force. As far as he's concerned, we should collapse every other thing and put into the police force. And so that, to his mind, is to come to the point he just made so that there won't be too many structures all over. But you see, these are organs that do different things. Nigeria is a peculiar country. I believe that the road safety should keep doing its works. NSCDC, which also helps with vandalism. And why all this is coming up, especially excluding road safety, for example, NSCD, is because we haven't had a model, a system that will protect everybody. And so we now have to create other avenues. But by the time you create state police and you structure everything well, you'll be surprised to know that some agencies will probably be rejigged or moved around to make sure that they form what we want them to form. There are not going to be multiple agencies. What we're talking about is the Nigerian police as is known today. In fact, instantly, I think I was even the one, not I think, I was the one that moved the motion to remove the force from the police. So it's not Nigerian police.
Did anything change with that? What's in the name?
We start changing with our mindset.
Oh.
It's our mindset. Okay. When you say Nigerian police force, everything they do is act with force. They should have to understand that they have to work with the people. There are areas of intervention. We've seen police people in this country who have intervened in even helping with the citizens.
Provide service.
Who provide service. It's not every time that you must handcuff, you must beat, you must shoot, and those are some of the things. And I've seen the police, the Nigerian police, react by deroping some of the police officers who have infringed. Coming back to elections and the Nigerian police, you probably cannot, extricate that from the Nigerian police, because we've seen that they also play an integral part. Is the Nigerian police the only agency that is involved in elections? They are not. On the day of the election, there are other agencies. And while we will talk about, I started contesting election in 2007. From 2007, I've seen the tremendous improvement from elections of 2007 and elections of 2023. Is it perfect in 2023? No. Has it improved from 2007? Yes. In 2007, that's where we'll be having elections in the field and results have been announced. You're in this country. You are still casting your ballot. And we've seen in this country where results were announced, the number of voters or those who cast their vote was more than the number of accredited voters. We've seen it happen in this country. We've seen it going on. But going forward, with improvement with INEC and improvement with technology and all we're doing, we'll find out that when we rejig it, we'll have those issues.
The other issue is that, I know you talked about Beavers, where lots of people had a lot of hope as to what was going to happen. Many actually came out based on thinking that there was going to be transparency for that election. So of course, the rest, they say, is history. So, the big question, if they trusted politicians at that point in time, or the authorities, to make that happen, and the results came out the way they did with the expectations of the people, how can they trust politicians to get this right? Because if the federal police, cannot handle the issues of policing, interfering with elections, and the way security agencies interfere with elections, what makes us think that these measures we're going to put in place will address it, if it's going to benefit, say, assuming state government?
Okay, I think I should touch on that. When we came on board as a parliament in June 2023, one of the most honest things after President Umaru Yar'Adua agreed some time ago that the election that produced him was flawed, the current parliament did agree that at the moment we do not have the best electoral system, and that there is also a need, for us to look at the issues in the 2023 elections. And as a parliament, we have a couple of 8 to 9 amendments, that we have received and, presented before the Nigerian people as a committee on constitution amendment. So the issue of electoral reform is very, very key. And it is one of the key policies that the 10th Assembly's philosophy of the Right Honorable Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, it tends to address. We want to see, not just, laws, because in 2022, we had an amendment to the Electoral Act, We want to now begin to see not just amendments, but how these amendments, how they work. And that is why in the Constitutional Amendment Committee, we have set timelines, not to cause amendment, 5 months to the end of the parliament, but make possible amendments, and the law becomes operative at least 2 years before election. We begin to test them. And you can test some of these amendments, even before primaries with the electoral process. For instance, we've just had an election in Ondo State. Election is coming up again. Primaries just took place in Ondo. Yeah, elections are coming up in Edo and Ondo. So with the correct Electoral Act, if we go there, and the things that we have seen from the courtrooms, pronouncement by court on the Electoral Act, where mistakes were made and all of that.
Right, General,
so we intend to put
we're winding down,
together,
but a combination of factors, really. If you look at the states where the State Independent Electoral Commission conducts elections, local government elections, we all know the results.
Yes.
The states win it landslide.
No, wins everything.
Everything.
Yes. It is only at the center that you have. No, it is only at the center.
That is with SIEC.
Yes.
So you can imagine if add to that, you then control the police. They win everything and run opposition out of town.
Yes. So, Chamberlain, you see, the beauty of democracy is not about us.
Oh, I'm talking about the issues.
Yes, yes. And that's why I said that's democracy. In a democracy, if the people are crazy enough, in quote, to say this is what we want, and the larger population of the people who, in quote, are crazy, in line with them, say this is what we want, in line with our philosophy, there will be nothing we can do about it.
In narrowing down and in buttressing that point, I think that we have to juxtapose the major issues. Nigeria is drowning by the day in insecurity, by the day. In Abuja, where we live, that we thought was safe, it's really no longer safe. With dismay, I watched one of the army chiefs talking about the military intervention around FCT to make sure they curb some of the criminalities we see. So the military is overstretched, the police is underfunded, crime is not abating. We have so many issues going on that we are now grappling with these issues. So what do we do? What do we really have to do as a people? Now, you are also just opposing the amendments to the Police Act with that of INEC. These are the issues that we need to work out. As elections, we have elections going on, we're definitely going to be having amendments and, of course, watching out on how our elections play out. It's a continuous exercise. It's not going to be a one-stop shop. And finally, I don't know if this is some of the final things we need to say. I want to thank yesterday what really has happened. As I said in the beginning, the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, members of the National Assembly for that forum yesterday, and also President Jonathan for his contributions, of course, the Vice President and the President lending their support. The Royal Father, the Sultan of Sokoto, who was there yesterday, the Obi of Onitsha, who couldn't make it, and then the Oni of Ife, who simply took up the microphone and said, listen, let's stop the talk. Let's walk the talk. This is the time to act. If we want to act to safeguard our country so that we don't become, if you look at the index, Nigeria is way low. It's a dangerous moment to live in, and we need to take the appropriate steps to make sure we safeguard our lives and property.
All right, Honorable Obin Ashidoka, as a former member of the 9th Assembly, we've also had Honorable Philip Agbese, who is a spokesman of the 10th House of Reps Committee on Constitution Amendments. Thank you both for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
All right, so Business Morning on Sunrise, it is up next with Ini John Mekwa.
Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And yes, it's time to do a bit of business from all those very important state police talks and all of that. We start from the global space. Prices of oil edge higher on Tuesday after falling in the previous session as investors continue to assess the risk from geopolitical concerns in the Middle East. Now, let's start with a global benchmark, which is Brent as usual. But of course, this concerns Nigeria. This is what we have. Yesterday, it was at $86. This morning, it's gone up 0.23%. It seems that ease is beginning to reduce. So we see tension and eyes more on the Middle East and all of those factors. So we see it at $87.27 a barrel. WTI follows way behind those 0.27% at $82.16 a barrel. And yes, we have the tensions between Israel and Iran driving prices. Investors are also looking at the U.S. GDP, that's the gross domestic product figures, and the March personal consumption expenditure figures, which is expected later on this week. Of course, we've talked about how interest rate cut is being delayed because of some of those numbers coming from the United States. Now, let's come to our own, the Naira. And, I mean, we're continuing this trend now since last week, going back into the red. And yesterday was a big fall for the Naira. We've been hovering around 1,100 yesterday. There was a deep fall, 5.51% in the NAFEM market. And we saw it going from 1,169 Naira 99 kobo to 1,234 Naira 49 kobo. NAFEX closed at 1,206 Naira 83 kobo. And this is in the official market. I think the parallel market is still doing around 1,100. Now, the interesting thing is you go back to the market, especially the electronics now, the guys are telling you that because of this, that has been happening since last week now, there's uncertainty. They may have to increase prices again. And so the issue of even Nigerians' reaction to the value of the Naira is also, you know, a question that we should be asking ourselves as Nigeria. We'll talk about that later on. But first of all, I'd like to tell you that the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, along with other stakeholders in the rail sector, they paid a courtesy visit to the Vice President, Mr. Shatima, to share their perspective on macroeconomic issues as it borders on their operation as well as the impact of subsidy removal and ongoing reforms in the country. The president of LCCI, who led that delegation, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa, says that he believes that the meeting was fruitful because they shared some ideas with the vice president and with the promise of bringing these new ideas into the running of the economy.
The fundamental changes that have come with the removal of subsidy, the unification of the currency, has opened up a lot of opportunities, which we believe that the government can fast track with a couple of policies and measures that we have discussed with the Vice President, and we have profiled some solutions which can be implemented. And we have been assured by the Vice President that a couple of these are practical, they are doable, and he intends to consult with the President and work with us to chart the pace of implementation. The Vice President had assured us that we will continue this conversation on how best to implement these policies across various sectors of the economy: agriculture, oil and gas, manufacturing, and then the very important information and communication technology industry, which is creating a lot of jobs for young people.
So that's it. Another set of conversations. We had a lot of conversations, you know, at the just concluded IMF spring meeting. We had the loan and, you know, a lot of ideas, the one coming from the World Bank, the IMF, and even, you know, among countries. But I guess, as one of the Sunrise Daily guests said, it's time to go away from just talking the talk to walking the talk. You know, and we hope to see that really soon. Now, talking about walking the talk and the issue of the Naira now depreciating for more than a week now, let's find out what's going on with the manufacturers, the real sector right there. And joining us from the UK this morning is the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Coleman Wise and Cable, Mr. George Onofowokon. Mr. Onofowokon, good morning, and thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, Amy.
So we were celebrating the Naira. We saw it appreciating, went all the way from about 1,900 to 1,000 and I think 1,100 or less than that. Unfortunately now, it's about 1 week, we've started seeing it declining again. What is the rate from your own interaction? How has it been with you? Did you see a reduction? Because we're hoping to see commodities prices reduce, and now we see it declining again. So I don't know what to ask of you manufacturers, because you didn't even reduce the prices even when the Naira was gaining.
Point of correction, Amy, we actually did reduce the prices. From the perspective of the cable industry, I think we had a massive reduction in prices over the period as we were able to see some interaction and see some replacement possibilities. So for us, we actually were reducing prices. Yes, I think the Naira did peak itself at about 980 at its most at NIFEX. Then it's also started devaluing again. The unfortunate part in everything is that when it devalued to its 1,900 mark, you saw the whole manufacturing sector literally go according to the pace of prices. Now, would price come down instantaneously? I don't think that would normally happen, because there would have been a buy. And of course, you will have to have bought at certain prices. If you bought your material at 1,700, you're not going to sell it at 1,100. So it would have a cycle. The cycle invariably actually is the time it takes for the next buy to actually come in. Then you see it. It's normally about 60 days to 90 days of any cycle. You will see a price reduction from the impact of the appreciation of the Naira. Now, the unfortunate part, again, for most manufacturers is that they took a big hit last year during the devaluation. I think a lot of them are still dealing with their losses. It is not been fantastic as of yet. But what I think we would be seeing is that we'll be seeing some stabilization, rescheduling of debt positions to actually stabilize their positions and to actually be able to continue in business. Tightening as is happening because, of course, we have to tighten everything to actually be able to balance this FX position. But in my own view, there's been not much gains for the manufacturer, because since the Naira appreciated, everybody has gone on a slow pace of buying, because now it's a question of when does the Naira reach its ultimate pricing. Now, so what happens is every buyer is literally waiting, and it's an unconscious attitude to actually just say, oh, maybe the Naira appreciates tomorrow, it appreciates next tomorrow, I wait. And so it's not been a good rebound for the manufacturers in sincere terms, because it's meant that everybody's expecting a price reduction, and for that reason, they're not making purchases as they should. So our business is not doing as well as it should do. But a rebound now, which is still not good for us anyway, is actually making people rethink where the minimum level or where the pricing level of Naira should be. And the purchases have started again. But for me, the inconsistency, and I think it's not helping matters, but I think we're on the right track. I think what is happening today, for me, my own impression, is speculation. Now, one or two information came out in the market, Bloomberg information about the depleting foreign reserves. But that really, I think, has messed up a lot of things, because people misconstrue information. Because you can use your reserves to pay your debt. It doesn't mean you used it for actually FX payments. Now, a lot of things could have happened in the last 1-2 weeks, but invariably the speculators have come in. Everybody is sitting down on their dollars, trying to see where the dollar plays. But I think people speculating will lose their money. I still see Naira as being undervalued. It's a waiting game. I've gambled on that waiting game, and we're right. 100% right. We had an exposure at the beginning of the year, and I rather took a LIBOR plus interest for the 5 months period, and we've come out smiling, because for those that speculated that the Naira was 1,900, I literally didn't believe so, and we were right. Our buying price to me for the Naira is the lower 1,000s. and I still see a currency appreciating greater than 1,000. So for me, from the manufacturer's point of view, we've lost a lot from the devaluation, but the recovery is possible. And I think we should not speculate or be speculating with anybody. It's not worth it.
Well, from your perspective, I mean, it's good to hear that optimism coming from a manufacturer in the country. That, you know, is a good thing, and a good thing that should be spread. But when we look at the reality, because I've spoken to some economists about why they think the Naira is depreciating now, and I think you alluded to it when you said that, you know, a lot of people just withheld their demand when the Naira started appreciating. And now it seems the demand for FX is coming back, and that's why we see the Naira. But what do you see as a turning point to this? We've had the CBN intervene in the market, which is why we had the story about the reserve dwindling. You know, what do you see as a turning point at this point where we see the Naira depreciating again?
Turning point, we are reaching the turning point. If you look at yesterday's market, we're about 1,280 parallel. Now, NIFEX was having its own blips up and down, but today we've seen a movement down to about 1,250, 1,230. And I think it's appreciating itself back again. Now, for me, it is still a blip. It's not a bubble. Now, if you look at our situation, they've done the right thing. Short-term fixes have been there. You've tightened. You've introduced a lot of FPI, foreign portfolio investments are coming, bringing in more dollars. And look at it, the direction of bond sales has been towards the actual foreign portfolio investors rather than local. And you are getting it. Yes, the interest rate is coming down to about 20%, but it will not take a bit out. And when you look at it from the economic side, I think what people deluded, if you look at from the treasury side, what took money out in the last 1-2 weeks was FPIs, really, and it was crystallized FPIs, which were taking their money, which is normal. But it's only a blip for a short period of time where foreign portfolio investors take their investment, they come back in again. I don't think that is an unnecessary reason for us to panic. That to me, because I also did the research into why were we seeing so quick an impact. And from the Treasury perspective, some of the guys I spoke to in Treasury, it was a lot of foreign portfolio investors taking their money out. Now, they would take a big chunk of money, but it would also, once they finished, it will stop. Now, the major difference between Nigeria today and our FX position today is that we're not having that fear factor pricing is going. Now, the bigger problem we have is two different pricing is into the Naira pricing. Is the fear, which is priced in, the speculators, which is priced in. Take us the fear and the speculators, you find the real value of the Naira.
What's the real value of the Naira? What's the real value of the Naira from your perspective now?
For me, today, as of today, it's ranging between the 950 and the 1,050. That's my range now. So it should not be trading more than that. Anything greater than that is speculative. You're going to just lose your money. At the end of the day, you're going to make more money for the government anyway. They're going to end up trading, wait for you to actually trade high, bring their dollars in, make their money out of you, and come back into the market at a lower rate. So that to me is where we are now. On the long term, on the near term, if you look at end of the year, that Naira is definitely going to be below 800 to about 900. And for me, next year, we're going to have a currency trading end of next year between 600 and about, I just have brushed it over that. The big thing is that the short-term fixes are the interest rate, the FPIs. The long-term fixes are your FIDs on your oil and gas. You have Bonga coming up, $5 billion. You've got quite a few oil and gas related projects coming on board, which now they're onboarding, which is different from what we used to do. So you have a short-term fix by tightening the economy. You have a long-term fix by making sure other income comes in apart from your oil. So you need investment from FPIs, especially from oil and gas, which the figures are far bigger. Then you have Train 8 on the table. So when you look at the portfolios that we have related to oil and gas in Nigeria now that are going to be FID'd within Q3, Q4, and next year, you're talking in excess of 30 to 50, $60 billion on the table. And I think we have to see that these guys are not shying away from making sure those FIDs happen. And in the last discussion I had with someone in the oil and gas, we were talking Train 8. They're looking at a Train 8 already being FID'd by Q1 of 2026. So the difference now is that it seems Nigeria is in for business rather than in for speculative business. But now that would change the trend, strengthen it. Then finally, if you look at what else will strengthen the Naira, now we're a country that is so dependent on importation of petrol and diesel. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. Now, let's actually refactor. You've got Port Harcourt refinery, which I still think is about 3-4 months away from giving you that 60,000 barrels a day. You've got your Warri refinery, which is under full reconstruction. Also, you've got your Kaduna refinery, which all will come most likely upstream by 2025, 2026. Now, you take your Dangote refinery, which in my own figures most likely will come properly upstream by end of the year, beginning of next year, where you can actually see both the diesel and the petrol coming out by next year, 2025. You take that into account, you'll be net positive of your oil positions in terms of petrol and diesel as of that time, which means we should not be importing any petrol or diesel by the end of 2025. We should not have any reason to. You take that out of the scope, you're taking $7 to $8 billion out of your foreign exchange needs. And then if they all keep on going as they should by 2026, you should be positive. I should not see Nigeria processing less than 700,000-800,000 barrels a day.
Mr. Nafoka, what about your sectors? What about manufacturers? Have you increased your export in the real sector, manufacturers? Because that's also a sustainable way to keep appreciating.
But the first question would be, what's the local demand? I think we keep getting this export thing imbalance. If an exporter, yes, you have some level of export in Nigeria. The biggest losers a bit on this thing will be the exporters with the Naira appreciation. But the biggest gainers will be the local players also. But it can be both-sided. Now, what I mean by that is fiscal policies must balance what they're trying to do. You're going to get a stronger Naira. Now, a stronger Naira might mean a weaker export. Now, you then really need to get your fiscal policy right to make sure that you're enabling the exports to still continue to happen, whereby you're turning your country to a processing zone. Now, which means I need to be able to get in as much raw materials as possible at the lowest possible price and process and sell added value back outside. Now, I am into the business of export, also not local. But I need to actually see that there will be benefits to the manufacturers in the sense of fiscal policy reforms that would enable that. And I think we're already playing that direction with some of the things, the policies that man is also pushing with the government to try and get that right. But immediate term is that we need to actually be able to bring people back into business. And for a manufacturer's perspective, I'd rather have a stronger Naira than a weaker Naira.
All right.
It would not be, in the perspective, good for any manufacturer locally because their raw materials is still being imported.
Exactly.
So if you're going to, it will end up causing costs to any individual or to its customers or to its consumers. Because if you have a very devalued Naira that is very low, you're going to have high prices, you're going to have inflation.
Yeah,
so those will be the back end of it.
Of all of that.
Thank you. As a manufacturer, we need the strength.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nofokon, Managing Director of Coleman Wires and Cables, for your perspective this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll find out how all of this is affecting commodities. Plus, I think it's harvest season and all of that. See, the bag of rice is reducing. Good news. We hope that's sustained. Let's talk about that after the break. To stay with us.
34 million hectares of arable land. Over 200 million people. One nation. Home to Africa's fertilizer company. Dangote fertilizer. Pure urea fertilizer. With one single-minded passion to feed Nigeria. Every bag is a potential, an aspiration to turn this green nation into the biggest food basket of Africa. Dangote fertilizer.
It's commodities time now. We're having that conversation with Dr. Adesola Sumoni. He is a senior associate with Financial Derivatives Company. Hi, Dr. Sumoni. Thank you so much for your time. So we're just talking about the Naira, which we saw depreciating on yesterday, 2.61% right there, one of the market. But let's see how, so this is it. We saw that on NAFEM, it depreciated about 5%. NAFEX, it depreciated 2.82%. So we're talking to a manufacturer, and we see how this affects, of course, the cost of goods and all of that. But talking about the commodities, domestic commodities, and I think it's harvest season and all of that, how do we relate the dropping Naira at this time, and domestic commodities?
Thank you for that question, Amy. I think it's been nice to start with why are we seeing the Naira drop so sharply, and then what can be done about it, and then we look at how it affects domestic commodities markets. So let me start by citing or quoting the central bank governor at the World Bank IMF meetings last week. He said that what they're doing currently in the foreign exchange market is willing buyer, willing seller, and price discovery, right? And what has happened is, together with some interventions in the market, we saw the Naira appreciate this month. As a matter of fact, the Naira was, I think, the best performing currency globally in April, appreciating, I think, around 60% year to date. Not 23%, I beg your pardon, year to date. But what has happened is, as the Naira appreciated more and more, it came within the willingness to pay of more and more buyers. So more and more people were willing to pay, say, 1,200, 1,100 Naira for $1 compared to when it was, I think, 1,600. So we saw a lot of latent demand get into the market. And since it is a free buyer, free seller, willing buyer, willing seller, I beg your pardon, what happened was the demand significantly outweighed the supply, and that's why we saw the exchange rates depreciate quite sharply, because more and more people are willing to pay 1,200, 1,100, and that significantly increased the demand. Also, as we are moving to May, we are seeing demand for summer travel. We are seeing demand for health, tourism. We are seeing demand for school fees for many people who have their children in the United States. They're going to have to pay for school fees. We are seeing demand for summer graduation travel in much of the Northern Hemisphere. Graduations are around this time. So that is part of why we are seeing such a sharp depreciation in the Naira. And what we need now is fresh money, because if you look at our FX inflows, particularly coming from the oil sector, many of it is already encumbered. Like many of the receipts from oil have already been committed, and so we do not receive the full inflows. In addition to that, we need fresh money. We need foreign portfolio investment. Just last week, I think we saw around 600 million come into the economy in terms of FPI. If you look at the stop rate of OMO and Treasury bills, they're around 20% for 365-day bills, which they're tracking the monetary policy rates, which is currently at 24%, and that is kind of attracting our foreign portfolio investors into the country. We need new money also in terms of discussion with multilaterals. Just last week at the spring meetings, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, confirmed that they are receiving a World Bank loan, I think, of about $2.2 billion US. That's which I think at a 1% interest rate for a period of 40 years. I think that's really, really good. That would boost the supply of FX into the market. And finally, we need a discussion with creditors, particularly the Eurobond market. I think Nigeria may go to the Eurobond market to raise some FX, to kind of, essentially what we want to do is to boost liquidity in the foreign exchange markets so that the market is liquid and so that, we can have price discovery at a reasonable rate.
So how do we connect all of this to the planting season, which the country is at? That's Nigeria. I know you're in the UK at this time. And prices, we've seen, for instance, last week we did celebrate the drop in the price of rice. I hope that doesn't trend up again. How do we connect both?
I think first you need to look at the commodities that have import content. For commodities that are heavily import content, I think over time, as we see the currency appreciate, over time, that will translate into the price of this commodity. Because remember, many of these commodities were purchased when the currency was, the exchange rate was still high, for lack of a better word. And so many of these stock need to be sold off before, we then begin to see the effect of the lower prices. Before we begin to see the effect of the stronger exchange rates on domestic price. If you look at the price of rice, for example, it is down, I think, 7% month on month, a 50 kg bag of rice to 88,000 Naira. Look at flour, is also down around 8% month on month to 59,000 Naira. And if you look at sugar as well, also down, I think, 6% month on month to 80,000 Naira. These are all 50 kg bags. But when you look at commodities, agricultural commodities, particularly these commodities they are usually scarce during the planting season, and we see the prices of these commodities trending upwards. Look at the prices of tomatoes, peppers, both are up. That is the basket of tomatoes and basket of pepper. Both are up 16-18%. For tomatoes, 16% to 35,000 Naira. And for peppers, 18% up month on month to 100,000 Naira. If you look at the price of beans, also is up 12% month on month to 90,000 Naira. This is a 50 kg bag of beans. If you look at plantain, a bunch of plantain is also up around 28% to 4,500. And the new yam, medium-sized new yam, is also up around 40% to 10,500 Naira. So because of during planting season, it is during planting season we usually have scarcity of these commodities, and so we are seeing the prices of these agricultural commodities trend upwards. But for the other import elastic commodities, we see that as the exchange rate is strengthening, we are seeing some of those translate into the prices of these commodities, and they are coming downwards.
Rice, I know a lot of it is imported. Perhaps that's why the price is trending downwards. Is that sustainable?
Indeed. I believe that the exchange rate will continue strengthening. I believe that the central bank governor, they are doing, this current team, they are doing the right thing. And I believe with that, as well as with, improving the business environment, which will further improve or increase the inflows of foreign direct investments into the economy, which is very, very important, which the previous speaker really alluded to. I think that would help strengthen the Naira. And if that continues, then we'll begin to see further strengthening. We'll begin to see the prices of these commodities trend downwards further.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Adesola Sumoni, Senior Associate with Financial Derivatives Company.
Thank you for having me.
I have to go on another break. When we come back, we'll do a bit of the markets before we head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios. To stay with us.
The Dangote Petroleum Refinery is going to be the largest single-train petroleum refinery in the world. Dangote Industries have enormous confidence in the potential of Nigeria. Africa is like an unexplored gold mine. We know there is huge opportunities here.
What makes this project different than others is for sure the size. This project is transformation for the country and for the continent, I would say.
The Dangote fertilizer plant will transform the agricultural sector. We go for the state-of-the-art technology. It will help to create employment and to reduce the massive demand on foreign imports. It's going to have a major impact on the lives of the Africans. It's a moment of great pride.
Well, that's about all we can take. But before, of course, we head back to Sunrise Daily, I just inform you that the market recovered. The NGX recovered yesterday, 0.13% at 99,665. There you have right there, market cap, even though it's still at 56 trillion naira, gained 71 trillion naira. Activity was mixed yesterday, and sectors were also mixed. But we'll get more market details, fresh numbers at 1 p.m. You don't want to miss Business Incorporated. Ladi Williams will be here to give you that. But now let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios. Back to you guys.
The international community has both the moral and legal obligation to help in this cause because it is outside money, not African money, that fuels the illegal operations. Key to our collective efforts against terrorism is the need for a fully operational regional counter-terrorism center. This center will serve as a hub for intelligence sharing, operational coordination, and capacity building throughout our region.
Yes, indeed, President Bola Tinubu speaking about the need for a regional counter-terrorism structure to address the challenges and not leave it to external countries to handle for us. So we've got Mr. Dennis Amakre, former director with the SSS, joins us virtually from the States. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
good morning, Chamberlain.
Yeah, so security concerns and efforts to tackle them across board. First, we had that of the multi-layer policing structure being debated currently at the moment in the country. And then we now have this counter-terrorism appeal to come up with that approach for Africa. So you, former security operative, so well-versed in both areas, I might add. So let's start off with your impression of this counter-terrorism appeal by the president to all his counterparts in Africa to see how we can forge a common front to address these challenges. He believes it could make headway if we approach it that way. What do you think?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. I am excited. In fact, a lot of things happened yesterday. The counter-terrorism conference that was going on, and of course the one by the House of Representatives for state police. These are all issues that have been in the cooler for a very long time. The counterterrorism structure is, of course, we have a counterterrorism center in the Office of the National Security Advisor. And I don't think it has been operative for a very long time. We even have the heads. Some major generals have been appointed as the heads of that particular structure. But I don't know how far it has taken place. But with the new gusto and with the United Nations coming into it, we are going to have a better deal because we have been asking for that fusion center. The fusion center, to make it very operative so that things can be addressed in real time.
Let me jump in and ask you. I mean, I know that with the Navy in this country, they've got capabilities to address some of these challenges of pirates. It's become history now. And then seeing that capacity, and then even with the military and some other security agencies, we've seen intelligent, fantastic officers, some retired, some still serving, but some of these challenges that we grapple with in this country, many just cannot relate, particularly in context of these personalities that we do have. How do we, because you yourself just highlighted the counterterrorism unit in this country and what you think of them. So do you think we have a very good basis here? Because many will say, look, if we have to go with this, we need to be sure that we've covered our own end here. All of these encumbrances and bottlenecks are off the way so that we can have that common front first and foremost before we then extend our tentacles seeking Africa cooperation.
Well, the thing is that, you know, security situations are more complicated when they are mixed with politics. And we would want, especially this government, to clean the house, make sure that the security aspect, the security function in the country this time is free and independent to work very well for the country. They said that in our constitution, the security and safety of the people is the primary responsibility of government. And if that is the case, then we should give it primary attention, either in budgeting or in doing things. In fact, it should be the first thing, you know, to take care of either the military, the police.
What specifically would you want him to do practically? What kind of steps should he be taking?
Well, when we come to this, you know, we need to restructure the security agencies. We need to restructure the review, because the structure we've been using since independence is not alive to the new emerging threats that we're having. So, number one, restructure the security agencies. And when we say security agencies, of course, the police is one of the major ones. And that's why I told you I was so excited, because yesterday they were talking about state police. We need to restructure it in such a way that the police is designed to address criminals or crimes that are happening in their locality. And we can go into that later, but you know, you find out that if we start to deal with all the crimes in the way that is in the federal structure, the pyramidal federal structure, it will not work. So when you are restructuring, you want to divide the crime. Let there be federal crimes to be addressed by the federal police, state crimes to be addressed by the state police, and then, of course, local crimes, you know, by the local sheriffs. If somebody go and steal eggs in a poultry farm, we're not going to call the federal police to come and deal with that. So these are the things, and that should be spelled out in the constitutional amendment that is going on, because that is the first things that we do.
Mr. Makri, I want you to be able to take you up on a few issues that were raised yesterday. It was a very intense conversation. We even heard the Deputy UN Secretary General, of course, talking about the social contract that government has with the citizens and delivering on good governance. And we also saw President Tinubu alluding to that in his own speech as well, where he talked about the root causes of these insecurity that we face across the country. But I want to take you up on a few things. A regional counterterrorism center. In what ways will a regional counterterrorism center help to fight the insecurity that we're feeling in the country? As you just alluded to the fact that at the local levels, we have a situation with our policing structure, and you said it needs restructuring. How do we get a regional counterterrorism center to work in a place where the local policing is, you know, for want of a better phrase, has a few issues that need to be addressed?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for that. It still comes down to structuring. And then, of course, remember that all the countries, all the states in West Africa, as we are referring to right now, will have their own police systems. They will have their own counterterrorism structures. And of course, the regional, the good part of the regional structure is where if a country is facing a particular terrorist action, you know, the other countries will contribute to see that they go and support the country that is in the union. I think President Jonathan referred to it yesterday, where was it in Rwanda or in Botswana, where if there's any problem, South African police or military are sent to help. And I think that's what it should be. Just like we had ECOWAS. ECOWAS was basically Nigerian. Other countries were there, but ECOWAS was Nigerian. And we should be able to, share this responsibility if every country develops their counterterrorism measures.
Mr. Makri, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so I want to take you up with that. Our counterterrorism capabilities as a country, where do you think we are? Are we up to par?
We are not yet. We are not yet, because counterterrorism, in fact, is going to be part of the state police. But we can decide to structure a federal counterterrorism group or unit that is well-trained, a highly trained structure that will respond to critical incidents. And that's what we need, because it's basically training. It's basically training. And then weaponry. We have to give them the right weapons. Sometimes it looks funny. I was having a friend, and we were discussing when the Kuriga girls were kidnapped, and you find out that they were moving tankers, tankers to that area. Those are not the right weapons for that. We need to have special weapons and deploy special tactics to address certain crimes. And I think that's what should be. So we train them, we equip them properly, and they can respond properly across the region.
That was something the president talked about yesterday. He talked about ransom collecting and illegal mining. And it's a situation that many people may not know much about, but in many cases fuels the problems that we're seeing in most parts of the country, especially in northern Nigeria. With the ransom collecting, it's brought up the question about poverty and, many people not being able to understand how governance doesn't get to them and resorting to all these criminal activities. As is, we just had a conversation right now where we talked about how people are even taking 100,000 Naira as ransom. With ransom collecting and illegal mining, as the president said, he says they need to be nipped in the bud, but how do we get that done if the root causes of insecurity, such as poverty, is still so endemic in our country? What is your take on this scenario?
Now, thank you for that particular question. You see, one of the root causes of insecurity is poverty, unemployment. All those ones are there. Lack of security, food security, all those ones, because we are not going to keep on, like the president said earlier, no payment of ransom. Now, when you pay ransom, and they use the money to go and, refortify themselves by buying new arms and ammunition. We don't want to do that, because it is detrimental. We are hitting or, hurting ourselves by doing that. So the best thing to do is don't pay ransom. But if you don't pay ransom, do you just continue negotiating? Because they will not give you the people, the hostages they took. Then you must be able to respond. That's why we're talking of a highly trained, response to critical incidents. We want a state police or, the counterterrorism unit, which will have a kidnap response team. And this team should be able to deploy within 15 minutes. And when we say deploying, we are not talking of them waiting till daybreak, because their special weapons will include night vision devices, imaging, that they could use at night. They should be able to have helicopters that can fly at night, armed helicopters, attack helicopters. And these are things that we have to, because that is where I was very worried when it comes to what was discussed yesterday. Are we ready to fund it? Some people say, oh, we cannot, because, of course, the IG of police said it, we are not ready. We are ready, very, very ready, because there was a time in this country where they said we are not ready for cell phones. And of course, later we saw when the cell phones came all over the place, even small children have their own phones, okay? So we are ready. We are ready for state police.
For that, I mean, you know, part of the argument is that the governors will take advantage of this and run their opponents out of town. They give us several instances. You've been an operative in the field yourself, and you might have had first-hand experience with some of these cases when it comes to elections. What would your recommendations be, or do you think those points they raise are valid or not?
The fears are valid. The fears are valid. Because even we've had a governor come to television here and say that they actually rig election indirectly. And how do they do it? Policemen are deployed. And that's another part. You know, when we structure the police, then we have to, yesterday, who mentioned it? I think it was former President Jonathan. We have to restructure the INEC too, because we cannot continue mixing these people, and then, of course, they don't have the moral strength to resist. Policemen are deployed to a state. There's going to be an election. The governor goes there because he's going to run for election. Where are you people staying? Have you eaten? Okay, we have a place for you to stay. Okay, this is some kind of allowance for you to eat and all the rest. At the end of the day, if he tells them to rig the election, they'll rig it for him. And that's what they've been doing. So what do? We have to structure it properly in such a way that these people are not, you know, mixing up with the electoral process. And then, of course, state governors cannot, because we have to have different kinds of review, oversight, when a state police is created. You have a judicial oversight, you have legislative oversight, you have external oversight, external, like an independent body. And that's what takes place in other countries that operate that kind of system, an external body. And there should be community engagement whereby you find out that if there is any problem, the people in the community should be able to report that this is what the police have done. And if they go against the human rights, because that's number one, the human rights of people that they are protecting. They are supposed to protect and serve, not,
Well, when you talk about human rights, so I say, wait a minute, aren't you a former DSS operative? Does DSS know about human rights when it comes to getting their, whoever it is that they have to have in custody? So what's going on here?
I didn't hear you very well there.
I'm talking about, when you speak about human rights, many say, wait a minute, is Mr. Margaret not a former DSS operative? Do they recognize human rights within the DSS when it has to do with your job?
Yes, well, you know, that's the structures that are going on too. All the security agencies need to be restructured. And the restructuring mainly is training, reorientation. I remember, I tell you this, I was in the service during the military rule, okay? During the Buhari Diagbon regime, that was where we were recruited, and we grew up there to wherever we were. And then, of course, I was retiring when we have a civilian government coming, a democracy. And one of the major things that the headquarters did was to start reorienting people towards democratic systems. You know, so you find out that the impunity that was used during the military regimes does not happen in democratic systems, because now you are dealing with the human rights of people. There are constitutions. Remember, in a military regime, the constitution is suspended and there is no judiciary. You know, the Supreme Military Council, you know, is the people that decide on all kinds of things, chaired by the head of state. So that's why many people are saying that, well, the best military government is worse than the worst civilian government or democracy. So, this is the situation we find ourselves. So, if that is the structure, and security agencies have to reorient themselves if they are not doing it. And then, of course, when we're talking of reorientation now about human rights and stuff like that, Nigeria should withdraw the military from internal security. Withdraw them. Train the police. When we are talking about state police now, training is the first thing. Train the police. Because what is it? Is the military going to bring their armored tanks, you know, to start artillery, to start hitting terrorists? No. They will be trained in the normal or particular weapons to use.
Okay, just some other questions. I mean, much as we'll come back to this. So when, still talking on security-related matter though, these weapons that we hear and see different agents of state seize, for instance, customs. I know that last government, there were quite a number. Do they hand them over to the DSS? What usually happens to them?
Well, you see, in Nigeria, we say, give them weapons. And then remember, NSCDC, when they were formed, they were saying, oh, we need weapons. So they gave them weapons. They gave them these long rifles that are very cumbersome to carry. And then, of course, the customs, they give them weapons to start pursuing. And that's why yesterday, a lot of things really dropped, where they're talking of the boundary guards. And that is something that we need. These are the people that will have the special weapons to deal with. You know, when you are giving them weapons, the weapons are different. All weapons are not AK-47. In Nigeria, all weapons are AK-47. You know, even private people that want to use or trying to look for guns to use, or they are asking for people to carry guns, they are all targeting AK-47. No, because the weapons are different. And when you are talking of this special counterterrorism structure, you have to give them the right weapons. Now, assault rifles, submachine guns, sniper rifles, these are all things that they could use when there is a situation that will arise. Ballistic shields, explosive shields, which could be used in case there is somebody. I'll tell you one thing. When I was in charge of the Murtala Mohammed Airport, when I was in service, we had an incident. A plane was hijacked from Murtala Mohammed Airport and taken to Niger Republic. And they were there for some days. I'm sure you remember that situation, you know. And during that period, the Niger government in Niamey stormed the aircraft with their special team. These are special forces supported by France. And then, of course, took over the plane, released the hostages, and then, of course, they came back home. Now, if this happens in Nigeria today, as we are, I don't think we have a response team that could, you know, deal with a hijack situation. So this is what we're saying. And you don't go and use military, you know, start shooting at a plane. There are special weapons to be used. In fact, as an aside, the other day I was hearing about the EFCC trying to arrest a governor, and they were saying, calling the military, you know, calling. It was very funny because we have invited the military too much to take over things that the ordinary police is supposed to do.
I mean, it's very interesting that he brought that up, you know, special weapons that are necessary for special operations.
Exactly.
Okay.
Taser guns, whatever. You know,
before we wrap up with you, you know, because we do have to take some emails before we wrap up the show, we wanted to be able to talk with you a little bit about the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, because that was something else that Mr. President talked about yesterday at the event. There have been so many agencies that are responsible for the mopping up over the years. Have they been successful in doing this? Because we still see a lot of these things going around and being used for all kinds of nefarious activities.
No, they've not been able to mop it up. They've not been able to.
What suggestion would you give if you were in a position where you could say, look, this is the way to get rid of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in the country? What suggestions would you give?
I think that, you know, the suggestion I'll give is a simple one. Be deliberate about it. Be deliberate. You know, one problem we have in Nigeria is that we are too haphazard. When we are dealing with security issues, we have to be deliberate. You know, it has to be systematic. Now, small arms, we have a committee that was set up in the National Security Advisor's Office. Yes. They are supposed to be in charge of the mopping up of small arms and light weapons across, because we have a lot of them in Nigeria, whether you like it or not. You know, 80% of the illegal arms in West Africa are in Nigeria. You know, and these things come in when we are having the militancy, and of course we've had the amnesty program where they surrender their arms. But I can tell you right now, all the arms they surrendered were just old arms they are not using again. More are coming in.
Wow.
These people are armed. You know, see what happened in Okwama.
We'll have to thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Mr. Dennis Amakwe, former operative of the State Security Service. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we do have some messages. Go ahead, let's start with that.
I think we have one on the State Police from Paul Agbolade. He says, the debate about State Police is going back and forth because we're looking at a new creation or formation instead of deployment of available resources. If we check the technicality of the law that approved the NSCDC, that's the civil defense, this call can seamlessly be unbounded into state police because their area of concentration is the local communities. There's no reason to create another unit. Instead, let the state government take responsibility for NSCDC formations or commands in their individual states, recruit, train, and remunerate them to their standard. At least this will be productive and accountable avenue to direct the monthly billions of naira the state governments are currently collecting as security vote.
Okay, we hear you. But we also appreciate you, Sam, Ero, and Ojuromi Fred. We thank both of you as well for sending in your comments. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Have a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.